Hey, what's up, people? Happy Sunday. Cheers. Oh, good to see people. It is a beautiful night out. I wish we didn't have such shitty stuff to talk about, but unfortunately, that's sort of the nature of the beast at this point. It is, I don't know. There's a level of something in all of this. It's not just in the not just the odiousness of what we're dealing with, but it's also the escalation of it, and also the total denial and delusion that we've been dealing with now for years. And it's like one of those things where you kind of always hope in the back of your head that maybe some people will catch on after a while, that something like an attempted coup at the Capitol would wake some people up. But I think some people are really, really tired and, again, delusional about the United States of America and in denial about how bad things are. Um, on my end, it's been weird. I think I've said on past Bourbon Talks before that I can sort of tell what it I can sort of tell what my work is doing based on the level of harassment and sort of threats. It was a hard week for it. I'll be honest with you. When Florida came out, of course, and that's the main course for the evening, and obviously we'll use that to jump off on some other stuff. When Florida banned the teaching of critical race theory, which isn't about critical race theory, it has nothing to do with critical race theory. It is a catch-all that is meant to attack education and try and create a totalitarian type educational system, if you want to call it educational. It was one of the first salvos in a much larger war, and we'll talk about that in a moment. I wrote about that and talked about it on the podcast, and the Substack article that I did about it, talking about Nazi cultural Marxist conspiracy theories. Uh, the thread that I wrote explaining that went viral, and so I got more harassment and more threats over the past week than I have gotten in forever. And I've been comparing notes. I talked to Jason Stanley about it a little bit, and a couple of other people. I'm not sure they'd want to be named, and they're talking about this critical race theory assault has garnered them so much more negative attention and so many more harassing emails, messages, pretty deliberate, focused threats. It made it pretty clear very, very quickly that after a while, you start to get a feeling that like this stuff is not just coordinated, but that this stuff um, has like a momentum behind it. And what we've seen over the past couple of weeks is that the right wing establishment feels like they have a winner in this thing. They feel like that this is the type of divisive political cudgel that can not only win them elections, but also be an incredible foot in the door toward manipulating education, which they're always looking to do. And, it can be a really incredible way to indoctrinate people and create this quote unquote patriotic education. But it was almost immediate. It was very, very quick how fast the harassment and the threats came out. And what was strange about it, in my experience, is that it was coordinated. It was obviously coordinated. It was obviously spirited in a way that I wasn't necessarily expecting. I tweeted about this. Everybody that I heard from was obviously either some sort of operator or some sort of, maybe it was multiple accounts. I'm not sure. I mean, you can sort of get an idea of how this stuff works when it eventually comes together. There are networks of these people. They obviously are funded very, very well. There are multiple levels of how these operations take place. We've talked about it before. We've talked about it on Bourbon Talk before, that it's always the extreme right. It's the conspiracy theorist. It's the Alex Jones. It's these YouTube accounts. God knows who they are. They try this shit out. They take it for a test drive. They see if people are biting on it. And then all of a sudden it moves up, almost like a baseball player moving up through the ranks from like single A to double A, triple A in major leagues. And eventually what ends up happening is that places like Fox News bite, and they bite hard. And then when all of a sudden they start creating the discussion about this stuff, it starts becoming the buzzword, right? And all of a sudden, all these GOP politicians and personalities, they all start saying the exact same things, right? And you'll notice it if you pay attention to this shit. And by the way, it's bad for your health to watch this stuff. They'll use the same talking points because they're from on high. It used to be that somebody like Roger Ailes would go ahead and send that out. Now it's much more think tank operated. Now it's much more of a coordinated thing that goes across all of these different stratospheres. It has been weird. It has been upsetting, but it has become very, very obvious very quickly that this isn't just some thing, right? Like, so for instance, like the the bullshit Dr. Seuss thing was a thing, right? It was just like a spectacle that made Fox News viewers happy. Well, what we're learning now is that this has caught. This has really, really caught, and it's caught for a few reasons. One is because it's something that most people don't understand, right? This is academic stuff. It's academic jargon. And so you see within the academy, people are studying things like critical race theory. They're looking into the constructions of power and oppression, whether or not it's conscious or unconscious bias, all of that stuff, right? That's all academic stuff that a lot of people feel very far away from. There's a lot of class conflict in it. There's a lot of angry middle America in it. And so academics have been walled off from these people. So that's a problem. But it also is due in part because it takes a thing that they want, which they need the educational system not to tell the truth about the history of America and not to talk about systems of power. For people like myself, and I don't know, for maybe some of the people who are in the chat or maybe who are watching, the education that I grew up with was definitely not accurate. Like, I had some good teachers and they did the best that they could, but the curriculum was very much through the lens of American exceptionalism. They need that. They need that bad. They need us not to have conversations about power and about actual history. So they need to cut that off. They need to amputate it out, right? And get rid of it. And they need to get to the point where they can take control of these systems of power. Now, we talked about this on the Muckrake podcast on the Weekender edition on Friday. But these think tanks, and again, it's not just Fox News up here crowing about this stuff, because some of it is spectacle stuff. They'll just crow about it and they'll get their viewers all upset about it. This is being mobilized. This is being turned into a workable issue. I'm drinking Jim Beam Black tonight. I'm keeping it real, is what I'm doing. But yeah, they want very badly to go ahead and do the same thing they did with the judiciary. They want to go ahead and monopolize the educational space. So what they're doing is, and a lot of Trumpists are part of this, they are trying to get people who believe in these conspiracy theories to run for school boards and basically to capture school boards. This is hard. This is a hard thing, because what the right is daring us to do is they are daring us to get into a political contest at every level of government. And that's exactly right. It's to keep poor people from recognizing their similarities. And actually, I have a question about that we'll get to here in a minute about how we can work against that. But they really are trying a fascist type takeover of education and history and reality. It's the only thing they can do. They're not popular. They're not going to win elections unless they disenfranchise people and unless they start taking over things like the educational system. That's bad news, but that is where this is going. This is not an innocuous type, oh, it's a smokescreen, it's a Fox News spectacle. Some things are. The Mr. Potato Head thing absolutely was. And it is it's a really dangerous thing that they're doing. And it was very obvious very quickly from the harassment and the threats that I got. Like, it was very obvious very quickly. Yeah, where it has been. That's exactly right. They want to turn back the clock in order to knock back the progress and the reform that's taken place, or any of the momentum that's taken place. But if you talk to the people, or if you actually read the stuff, the harassment, the threats, and all of that, what I have basically had is a group of either avowed fascists, like people who are like, yes, we are fascist and we have to be fascist because leftists like you make us do this, right? Because that's the mindset. You're making us kill you. You're making us take out democratic institutions, all that bullshit. So they're either saying that, or, of course, they call you a race traitor, and they're like devotees to Anglo-Saxon culture, and like in their bios, it's all like, I'm proud of being white, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's the scary thing. Victor just said that DeSantis has latched onto this. DeSantis made a political calculation within Florida, which was it will help his political brand if he goes after, oh, End of the West. End of the West is one of them. Oh, End of the West. You are enjoyable, and I'm removing you. Bye. I just got rid of a troll. That felt good. Into the West is like one of those people who gets on there and talks about Anglo-Saxon pride and all that shit. Congratulations. So, yeah, DeSantis made a political calculation. And, you know, the frightening thing is that now, like the GOP works, it will go down the line, right? It will go down the line, and like, I live in Georgia. Like, why wouldn't they go ahead and do that? I mean, especially when you have someone like a Brian Kemp, who Brian Kemp wants desperately to retain favor with Donald Trump and the Republican Party, and wants to get reelected as governor. Like, this is it's a no-brainer of a political cudgel for him to choose. So that's the real danger, is if we start seeing this go down in dominoes, like, it is going to be an issue. Like, it's going to be a really, really big thing. Yeah, I saw Netanyahu go after Biden on his way out. That is who he is. That's who Netanyahu is. Him and Trump are, they're exactly like, I wrote about that a while back on the Muckrake, and it's just this, there's a personality for it. Real fast before I get to questions, Panther says, will Trump run in 24? Right now, I would put it at 60-40 that he doesn't run, but that he chooses his successor. But there's still a real possibility. There's a real possibility that he runs. But that being said, I would guess right now that he doesn't. I think he enjoys being retired. I really, truly do. Okay, to go with the question off of that, Henderson says, I read your thread and Substack articles on critical race theory. What's this end up looking like, and what's the end game? So, here's the thing. I think that if you got like a DeSantis or a Kemp or any of the people who are pushing this stuff, if you like sit them down and talk to them about it, I assume that they think that it could lead to quote unquote patriotic education. It probably doesn't go much farther than that in their mindset. In fact, they probably truly do believe that college and liberal teachers are indoctrinating students. They probably do think that there is a need to do this. But the long run, if you create a quote unquote patriotic education, particularly in the environment that we have right now, with not just changing demographics, but like polarized politics, that's throwing dynamite into the pond, my man. That is that doesn't go anywhere great, particularly with the replacement theory that's going around with, the right wing, particularly with radicalized right wing white supremacists and terrorists, um, yeah, that doesn't go anywhere good. And it actually will only escalate the situation that is already so bad. So if we actually do get to the point where all of a sudden we start teaching quote unquote patriotic education, that's a canary in the coal mine type situation. That is a weaponized distortion of reality in a time that rejects that. And this is what the Republican Party is doing. If they are successful in anything that they're trying to do, whether or not it's actually disenfranchising, whether or not it's overthrowing elections, whether or not it's hollowing out a woman's right to choose, whether or not it's basically making meaningless any of the rights that we have, or pushing patriotic education, none of that ends well. None of that just goes over and people are like, oh, cool, we'll enjoy it. Thanks. It's not what I wanted, but, good luck. It's an actual assault on shared society. That's a canary in the coal mine type situation. And what we are seeing around the world right now is that this is a burgeoning movement. White supremacy and hypercapitalism, which we'll talk more about in a second, they're in trouble. There's a real crisis brewing in the world right now. And if they go ahead and they push this stuff and they achieve it, I'm sorry, but you don't achieve that without blood. You simply don't. There is no way that those things are actually going to take place while people, sit back and let it go. And that doesn't mean that there will be a major cultural uprising or something, but there will be enough that it will get really unpleasant really, really quickly. And I keep saying, and I hope that you remember this, because this is one of the things that I want to warn people about. This is a huge, huge thing. Whatever fascism, whatever anti-democratic activity we see right now, whatever weaponized white supremacist paranoia that we see right now, it's only going to get worse as the crises of global climate change and the economic and political crises that we're dealing with right now as they grow. It's only going to get worse. And it doesn't mean that tomorrow we'll wake up and none of us will be free, but it could be bad. It could be bad. It could be really, really, really bad. Now, related, Molly Rogers says, how do you improve education for people who think it's oppression to be asked to stop shouting long enough to hear the lesson? So this is a topic that is very near and dear to me. So actually, I'll go ahead and answer that. Fancy Talking Soup says, would you recommend going into education and becoming a teacher? If you feel called to it, that's big. Like, if you feel called to be a teacher or an educator, that's massive. But I have to tell you that you're facing an uphill climb. It is a lot. It really, really is. And you are being attacked right now. There is a war on education. I can tell you that as an educator. It's completely true. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to organize. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to be on the ground. And this is where I'm going with what Molly said, which is, how do you improve education for people who think it's oppression to be asked to stop shouting long enough to hear the lesson? Here is the grand secret that I didn't understand until I started doing the research and until I started putting things together, which is white patriarchal supremacy holds down everybody except for like the 1%. Now, that doesn't mean that white people don't enjoy societal privilege, because they absolutely do. It doesn't mean that white men don't enjoy societal privilege. They absolutely do. But it is a stratified mythology. It is hierarchical. So what ends up happening is you have a bunch of people right now who are in the thrall of the Republican Party and also Donald Trump, who are letting their prejudices and their worst instincts and also their anger be channeled by people who have no interest in helping them whatsoever. No interest in helping them whatsoever. I've said this before on other Bourbon Talks, and I think on podcasts too. You tell them the truth. You tell them what's actually going on. You tell them what has actually happened in this country, why they are in the positions that they are. Yeah, Victor, I'll talk about that in a second. I think that's really, really important. Actually, I'm really glad you brought up that, Victor. I'll bring that up in just a second. If you can talk to actual people about why this country is in the sad declining state that it is and why people are manipulating them, and you have to get rid of the red and blue, left and right, blank two-dimensional spectrum, because it does not explain any of this, and all it does is it catalyzes polarization. It leads to conspiracy theories. It is an oversimplified story that doesn't actually explain why they are where they are. The good news is that these people are not dumb. These people are not stupid. If you tell them the truth in a way that other people haven't told them, they will listen. I think what we're looking at right now, and this goes to what Victor was saying. Victor said that Biden's infrastructure bill and anything else is dead, and we're not even talking about this. This is important because what Manchin, Sinema, and surely other Democrats have done, because if they didn't stand up against it, I'm sure other Democrats would stand up for the filibuster. It just so happens that Manchin and Sinema are making their political brand that they're standing up against it. It helps them. The agenda to actually change this country has been completely held up. And there are a lot of Democrats who have no interest whatsoever in changing major things. They have no interest in it whatsoever because they benefit from it and they don't want to upend the economic system. They have class solidarity, but that class solidarity is to the richest people in the country. They are either bought or they enjoy these people and they're part of it. And I'm sorry, but it's completely true. I think two things need to happen simultaneously, and I will come back to this a couple of times tonight. I think there has to be a social progressive movement, and that is where we get in the streets, we organize, we tell people what's actually going on, we talk to them about actual history, we talk to them about deep politics, we let them know how this country has arrived at this moment, what these conspiracy theories are doing, how they're leading them astray, and we start making a movement that actually wants to change things. The other part about it, and this is a hard pill, but this is where we are right at this moment, and I'm sorry to tell you this, but it's completely true. If you want things to change, you're going to have to change the Democratic Party. You're either going to put pressure on them from the outside, or you're going to have to get some people in there in the Democratic Party who do not have class solidarity and are not bought off by the highest and the wealthiest. We're going to go into 2022 and then in 2024 with an agenda that has been effectively stalled by the guardians of the status quo. So we can do what we can do on the ground. We can do what we can with our friends, with our family, with our communities. We can start progressive movements. We can actually start a movement that can change the entire face of this country. You have to believe that you can do it and stop relying on the people on TV to do it. But I'm telling you right now, if what is on the ballot in 2022 or 2024 is whether or not the Democratic Party has been successful in changing the country, they don't win that. And that's one of the reasons why Democrats are so bad at midterms. So you need an on-the-ground grassroots movement of people waking up other people to finally understand what's going on, while also starting to radically change either the Democratic Party, or if you believe in an outside effort, then do that. But as long as we have that straight left, right, blue, red system, it ain't going to happen. Because the people who run and the people who get elected are incredibly wealthy. And they're bought by the incredibly wealthy. Everybody who ends up doing it. Oh, Dolores, the corporations and the wealthy do want infrastructure change, but they want it to be privatized. They don't want the government of the United States of America, or any country for that matter, to take care of it themselves. They want to cut down reliance on federal governments and on governments in general and elections and all of that bullshit. They want to move to the point where they control it. By the way, cheers to Ned Beatty, a real one, died today. If you want to know how things actually work, go and look at his monologue from Network. They're no longer nations. They're only corporations. They don't want the government to help you. They want the government to be subservient to them. They want to suck on the body of the state. That's what corporations and the wealthy want. They want them there, that way they'll provide welfare to their workers so they don't have to pay for them. Or they want them there to provide like a little bit of health care just so that they can come into work. Or They want you to not believe in it whatsoever. They have no desire whatsoever for the government to take care of anything. That's just not who they are. But yeah, I truly believe that. Oh yeah, when the hurricane hits, please have FEMA come in. Please help us. Oh, we need a bailout. We believe in the government. Thank you. We appreciate it. Yeah. So that is, we're going to talk about that a couple times tonight. You either start a ground level grassroots movement of solidarity and we change things, and then on the other hand, I hate to tell you this. I hate to tell you this, but it's true. We have so much damn work to do. I wish there was an easy answer. And like when I talk to people about what's going on and how we can fight it, most of the time, I think people want a silver bullet answer. I think people, Jack, I'll answer that in just a second. People want it to be like, oh, don't worry, AOC will take care of it. Or don't worry, I think Nancy Pelosi's working on this thing. Or, oh, I think Merrick Garland will be perfect in his spot and they'll go after it. And, oh, I think the good guys are going to arrest them. Oh, I think James Comey has had a change of heart and I think he's going to fix it. People want to believe that messiahs are coming to fix the problem. And that is what they've been taught by the media and by political circles and spectacle. We have so much work to do. And I know that people were so excited about Trump getting beaten in 2020. And I was too, because he didn't need to be in office. He was a dangerous, dangerous person. And if he would have gotten reelected, my God, there's no telling what would have happened and where we would be even right now. But we have so much work to do. If we want to build something for the future, if we want to build momentum towards saving anything out of all of this, if we want to stave off, I mean, the crisis seems like a storm right over the horizon. I don't know if we're going to stave off all of it, but if we want to stave off something and keep something and keep human dignity and something approaching a halfway decent society, we have so much work to do on so many different sides of the ball. Going back to the CRT bullshit, we're going to have to pay attention to every school board election from here until forever, because that's what Republicans have done. They went ahead and they politicized and focused and worked hard on every election in the country. They cornered the entire judiciary until they took over the Supreme Court, and they created a backstop for the conservative movement, even if they don't win another election. Jack says, let me get it. Oh, I missed it. I had it. Oh, Jack asked, what do we need to do about the right-wing media machine? A couple of things. I mean, you either create an alternative or you push people to go after them financially. I mean, that's a big, giant thing. Yeah. No, most of them won't use public schools. The right since desegregation have used private schools as a means of maintaining white supremacy in education. They want to starve public schools. They want to destroy public schools. They want to turn them into these indoctrinating facilities. I mean, what do you think has happened in public schools over the past few years? They created a system wherein people were so focused on standardized testing that you weren't able to actually totally educate them, and they had to get in and get to a test and whatever. And they basically infected entire generations with chronic anxiety that they're still fighting with, and it makes them better workers. And by that I mean that they're terrified of it. They're terrified of losing their jobs. They're terrified of not coming through. And then they write these bullshit columns. They're like, oh, they just need reassured all the time. Of course they do. They've spent their entire lives burdened by standardized testing. What do you think they need? Money? Healthcare, support. Oh, Tim, you wrote about the G7 summit and the corporate tax proposal. It seems like this is kind of a make or break moment with them. Does that seem right? Yeah. So the G7 summit that's going on right now, it's really, really important that we keep an eye on this thing. So many signals are coming out of G7 that the state is really backed up in a corner. This isn't just America. America is, of course, at the forefront of all of this, but it's Canada, it's Germany, it's England, it's everybody. The neoliberal hyper-capitalistic project has failed. And not just failed, it's failed miserably. It didn't produce any of the results it claimed that it was going to. All it did was it created a hyper-capitalistic state in which corporations were given the keys to the levers of power, and they grew and grew and grew until they captured the economic sectors and they made monopolies for themselves. They went ahead and they used the global construction that was made for them by neoliberal hyper-capitalistic projects. They used that to become multinational in a scope where they no longer have to pay taxes or belong to any country, so they can just maneuver around them while exploiting labor. They created like a permanent hierarchy within like the different types of nations, and they have just totally eclipsed this state system. And again, Ned Beatty. Cheers to Ned Beatty. He warned us back in the 70s with Network. They had grown to the size where they no longer had to think about nation states. We're all hanging out in a nation state reality. What's going to happen to America? What's going to happen to Canada? What's going to happen to Mexico? What's going to happen in Britain? What's going to happen in Germany? Meanwhile, they're all above it. They're floating through the next level of atmosphere like a satellite, looking down on all of this and like, hey, congrats. Worry about your elections. Worry about that stuff. Meanwhile, we have purchased everybody who can run for any election anywhere, or they've tried to. And they have grown to the size where all of a sudden the nations are like, holy shit, I think we have a problem here. Like, we can't afford healthcare, we can't afford roads, we can't afford education. Also, because we can't afford any of those human projects, the people are pissed off and they don't trust things anymore. They don't trust politics anymore. And by the way, they're becoming ripe for demagogues. Donald Trump didn't believe in any of the shit that he pushed. He was a snake oil salesman. And it was his personal peccadillos and his own mental unwellness that made him so much larger and so much dangerous. The right wing saw what Trump did and they're like, we've always wanted to do this. Isn't it awesome that he's doing it and getting away with it? So what we now have is a place where the G7 is looking around and they're like, oh my God, the writing is on the wall. We can't rein these corporations in anymore. And like I was saying on the Substack and like I said on the podcast, they're going to go to war. They really, really, really are. They're going to go to war. The wealthy and the corporations are going to go to war against the nation state. Like they're going to find holes in this alliance because the G7 has to take it to the larger global community. And they're going to figure out how to do this thing. They really, really are, unless they're kept from doing it. But we are at a moment, and it's weird. I keep finding in all my research, it's very strange. Like there are all these moments in history where it feels like the way the world works. Like, oh, we're in the age of kingdoms. We'll always be in the age of kingdoms. Oh, all of a sudden things shifted a little bit. Oh, liberal democracy took over. Revolutions are knocking us down. And all of a sudden you get into, liberal democracy and everyone's like, oh, it'll be liberal democracy forever. And then all of a sudden fascists are like, hey, hold back. We're going to go back into the monarchies and the strict hereditary monarchies. So it can change. The biggest mistake that we make is that the way things feel right now are the way they're always going to feel. But we are being shoved into a neo-feudalistic, neo-fascistic state. It all depends on what shape it takes. Let's just be real about it. The problem we have in America right now is that we have basically a corporate-run system of politics and economics. You have a growing fascistic movement that has grown because they have control over all this shit, and there has to be some place where all of that anger in the country's zeitgeist can go. Insecure masculinity, all that stuff. Yep, that's Indiana. So all of a sudden, it creates a fascistic state, and then the corporations end up working with the fascist, and the wealthies work with the fascist. So the whole point of that is I don't know where it's going to go. The possibilities for everything goes is we end up in a corporate dystopia where, of course, fascists, break some skulls and make sure that reform doesn't happen. We end up in a fascist type situation. And let me tell you, the fascists self-destruct every time. They can't create something sustainable because they have a death instinct and a death desire. So they'll just create a bunch of wars. We could have a giant war, and God knows what happens when all of those chips drop, which that's a real possibility at this point. And we could end up in just a technology-aided dystopia, which, you know, we see parts of that in China, and we see parts of that here in the country, and what big tech wants to do. The alternative, is that we find something better. We are at a moment of malleability. We are at a moment where things are brittle and that they can be changed. We can change them. The whole answer has always been that they can fleece people and make them think that they can't change things. They tell you that you are powerless and you're alone, so you should shut the living hell up. That's the plan. They want you to shut the hell up. They want you to stop questioning things, and they'll figure it out, and they'll have their wars, and they'll have their things that they figure out, and then you'll just sit at home and figure out how stuff works. We're not supposed to be talking about this shit. There's a reason why fascism is on the rise. It's because we're talking about this stuff. We're comparing notes. We're going into the streets. We're protesting things like BLM. We're protesting vast inequality. We're having discussions about the actual history of the world and how things work. They don't like that. That's the worst thing that can happen, is you start having conversations. And so that's why they go after history. That's why they go after education. They don't want you to be able to have this conversation. I'm a poor ass Hoosier. I'm not supposed to be on a screen tonight talking to a few hundred people about things that I've learned. That's not what I'm supposed to be doing. It's not what you're supposed to be doing. There's something to this. It's a bunch of people who are trying to put the pieces together and understand, oh my God, why do things feel so weird? Holy shit, I've been lied to. And when people realize that they've been lied to, they can do amazing things. You have entire generations of peasant uprisings, populist uprisings, revolutions. You have all of these moments. You have movements that grow out of this stuff and change everything. If you get off here and you go turn on the TV, you're going to be shown a TV show that you can't do anything about. You can only comment about it, right? Think about that, by the way. It's like when you're watching, like, I haven't watched American Idol in so many years, but I assume American Idol does this. I know sports do it. When you're watching on the TV, you can get on the Twitter and you can type something like, oh my God, what a play. I love the Cubs. And if they pick you, they'll put your message up on the TV, but it doesn't change anything. It makes you feel like you're part of it. That's what social media is doing. It makes you feel like if you say the right thing, if you tweet the right thing, that will suddenly make everything better. But it's so much harder than that. It doesn't mean that you can't make a difference, but they want you to believe that you can't make a difference. You can't go to G7 and make an impassioned plea. You have to know the right people. You have to be invited to do that. The conversation we're having right now about G7 is those people are over here in Paris having this conversation. Why are they having this conversation? Because capitalism and the state-led system and liberal democracy are in real damn trouble. Well, what does that mean for us? That means for us that things are fragile and they can move right now. There are these moments where things aren't as solid as they are. We're in a crossroads type moment, which means movements, solidarity, those types of things can make an actual difference. That's why. Lacey says, I've never understood the underlying reason of why. Just why? Are people rich enough to simply not be impacted by climate change, by food shortages? No, a lot of them believe they'll get off the planet. They have a faith, a religious type faith in themselves and technology. And also they're delusional. All of the people who have like their own space programs and like their ideas that they're going to scatter humanity to the stars, they're also working on immortality. They don't believe that they're going to die in this stuff. Yeah, the rest of us assholes they'll probably just go ahead and try and plug us into VR while they're taking off, but that's not. They think that they're going to Mars. They think that they'll, jack their consciousness into a machine. That's what they truly believe is what's going to happen. They think that they will probably live forever. And if you listen to them and you actually read their stuff, that's what they actually believe. Lance says, listening to certain Trump supporters for months now, one can conclude that they would welcome a new civil war. Absolutely, they would. Many have called it as such. Unfortunately, I have as well. Is this a self-fulfilling prophecy in your view? Is it already underway? That's a great question. I'm gonna talk about this, but it's gonna sound a little weird. I hope you'll come with me for a second. There is such a thing as manifesting, right? And if you look through history, there are these big moments like World War One. It's really interesting. Heading into World War One, there are all of these people where there's like, I think we should have a big war. I think we're due for it, and I think it'd be good for us. I think it would really clear things out. Same sort of thing happened with the first Civil War. There's like, yeah, we'll have it out. We'll settle our differences. We'll have a couple of battles. It'll totally happen. It'll be fine. And eventually, because they're thinking of it enough and they're focused on it and they're pushing on it, they make it happen. And that's definitely what occurs, because one of the great secrets of existence is that we can make things happen. If you believe in things enough, you can sort of make them happen. You can, if you get enough people together and they talk about the same things and they believe the same things, you can create movements, you can create cults, you can create illusions, you can create religions. Yeah, I think a lot of Trumpists want a civil war. I mean, and you see it all the time now. I have to tell you, I traveled across the country. I was seeing so many like fascist stickers and fascist iconography. All of a sudden now I'm starting to see these, they took their, I don't know if you've seen these. So like, of course you have like the thin blue line, black and white American flags with like the blue line. Other times it's just the black and white American flag, which has this fascist sort of a feeling. A lot of those people have started flying just a black flag, which I have been told means no quarter given, no prisoners taken. Some of them are really excited about the possibility of a civil war. And I think that they have sort of been fed this masculinity fantasy where they truly believe that they've been prepared for this. I know from where I come from, whether or not it was familial influences or the teachings or the church, I know a lot of them have been told, to expect an apocalyptic battle with the authorities or the UN or the New World Order or whatever. They've been fantasizing about that forever. I know when I was younger and I was around my friends, we all used to go giddy about the idea of the apocalypse and Armageddon. Yeah, that might be right. The red flag is no quarter. The black flag has some sort of a connotation. I actually saw it. And I was like, I do not feel great about this flag situation. It has changed very dramatically. But there's a lot of people who were raised in this stuff, and they get to the point where they want it. Like, I cannot tell you the number of people that I have talked to who are like, God, I hope I live to see Armageddon. I hope I get to be a soldier in God and Christ's army. I can't wait for the day. I've heard people dream about Russian invasions, invasions by other countries, an outbreak of violence. I mean, my God, what are we watching these apocalyptic movies for? These zombie movies for? What else is a zombie movie besides hating the people around you so much and thinking that they're brainless and that you can just kill them free of charge and not have any sort of moral problem with it? We love that idea. And that is definitely in America. A lot of people really do want to get to the point where America falls apart, or there is a civil war type situation where they get to kill some people. A lot of these people, white terrorists, white extremists, they try and start this shit. They go into these places. That's why you see these terrorist attacks. That's why they keep having these rings broken up. They want so badly to go ahead and throw a bunch of gas out and throw a match on it. That's what they want. Absolutely. There are a lot of people in this country who are absolutely lusting after an American Civil War. 100%. Warlock Woods. What happens to a society when the influential people in a country destroy truth and trust in our government agencies? Is it all possible that anyone but the rich can survive? Probably not, particularly when these things start falling apart. Again, fascism is one of those things where all of a sudden you start seeing fascism rise. You know that somewhere along the lines of how society should work, it's fallen apart. Oh, I'll talk about that in just a second, Lacey. Yeah, that needs talked about too. Nobody asked a question about it, but I'll bring that up. Yeah, we are creating a situation in which survival in this country is going to go down. I mean, you already have life expectancy going down for certain people. You have, of course, infant mortality starting to go. You have these misery deaths that are going up. We are creating an untenable system, and America has been wounded in a way that I don't think most people understand yet. It has been undermined. Of course, we're still sort of the major point of consumption. We are still the major point of quote unquote culture, what we give to the rest of the world. Of course, we still have the dollar, which makes us the center, of the economic universe. And basically, we're incredibly friendly to business. Um, oh yeah, not to mention we are like the number one arms dealer in the world. So that's all good and great for state power and corporate power. It's not good for people living. It's not good for human beings surviving and thriving and having decent lives. So, no, they have created a system in which none of this works to our advantage. It's one of the reasons why we're so frustrated, we're so radicalized, we're so polarized. Lacey says, so we need to talk about spying on Schiff. So, one of the things I want to point this out, this is really important. Oh, the black was a Confederate no quarter flag. Shocking. This is me being shocked. Just 1 second. Shocked. This is my shocked face that this flag is obviously a Confederate no quarter given flag. Of course it is. Of course it is. Feels great. This whole thing feels awesome. Yeah, so the surveillance stuff from the Trump administration. Listen, we all knew this was going on. All of us critics of Trump knew that we were being surveilled, that we were being harassed. I won't get into specifics because, quite frankly, some of this stuff is not great, and most of us don't want to talk about it. Most of us don't want to talk about how we know it and what we went through. We knew there was surveillance. We knew that our personal shit was going through. The problem now is that this stuff is just coming out and no one wants to talk about it. It's really disgusting. It's really, really disgusting. Anything that you could imagine, the Trump administration doing to its political enemies, they did it, undoubtedly. But now that it's coming out, no one's paying attention to it because we've already normalized this shit. This is the scary thing that's going on. They've already normalized it. All of the corruption, all the cruelty. Trump carried out a virtual genocide in this country during the pandemic. He probably will not be punished for that. God knows the amount of financial criminal activity that administration was part of, how much corruption is going to go unpunished. I still maintain hope that maybe something will happen with like the New York AG, but I'm not holding out hope. I kept saying that and it didn't make me very popular. And the reason why I kept saying that is because powerful, wealthy white men do not often get hurt. God, no quarter given Confederate black flag. That's fantastic. That just feels so great. Jennifer Joyce asked, moving forward in this battle against fascism, what states and areas do you think are safe or less safe for liberals? That's a big question. People have asked me multiple times, like, should I leave the country or whatever? And I have to tell you that if America falls to this stuff, I don't think there's going to be many places that you can run from it. Every major liberal democratic country has this problem. And I keep trying to warn people, these far right white supremacist terrorists. They're in it together. They're waiting for liberal democracy to falter. There's a reason why the name of the book I'm writing is The Midnight Kingdom, because they believe that liberal democracy in the modern political order is ready to fall. They think it's at an end. The clock is getting ready to strike midnight, and that's over. So you're not going to get away from it. That being said, I don't know what the timetable is. Like when I'm talking about fascism, I'm talking about what's going on. I mean, my God, you could wake up tomorrow and they could have overrun the Capitol again. It could happen then, but it could also take time. It could be within our lifetimes. It might move beyond, but we have to understand that this is an actual threat. And this political order, the way that it is right now, will not continue. So right now, if you want to get to a blue state, I totally understand it. But I have to tell you that they have their sights set on getting into every state and disenfranchising, pushing conspiracy theories, threatening liberal democracies everywhere you could go. Jeff, did you agree with the QAnon is over article? No, I didn't. I thought that it was a well-intentioned article to talk about the fact that Q has gone silent, I believe since December, maybe November. I think it's December, though. And that we don't have to worry about it anymore. I wish that were the case. It's not. QAnonism has spread throughout the body politic, particularly among the right, to the point where people don't even understand that they believe in QAnon bullshit. It has infected the Republican Party, taken them over in totality, also the airwaves, also their media. No, QAnon's not dead. It is simply mutated, and it has become orthodoxy of the Republican Party and the right. And it's growing around the world, too. So no, I do not think QAnon is dead. Sally, you might never hear the word QAnon again or see a post from Q, but that doesn't mean that QAnon is done with us. I mean, far, far from it. Sally, how many times in history has a country marched towards fascism and not had a conflict of some sort? I just don't know if GOP will turn itself around peacefully. Okay, so there's a bunch of stuff here to answer. There's a difference between whether or not there was violence within the country or whether or not there was some sort of a conflict or a crisis outside. America had a growing fascistic movement from the turn of the 20th century up until Pearl Harbor. We had a real possibility of America being handed over to fascists. We had a really, really strong, vibrant fascist community within America. In fact, we helped inspire fascism and Nazism. We gave them in part their ideology and also their plans and operating tools. Of course, the New Deal helped stave that off a little bit. It took a lot of jobless young white men and put them to work, which was necessary in part to turn down the temperature. I think we could learn something from that now, but I don't know what would have happened if we didn't have Pearl Harbor. Because one of the things that definitely pushed us to the point of a fascist takeover was Americans didn't want necessarily to go into World War II. World War I had been such a bloodbath, and Pearl Harbor made us get in. It turned the tide. So here's what I would say. We don't know what the future holds. So when I talk about the threat of fascism in this country, a large part of what I'm talking about are conditions on the ground as we have them now. We can go ahead and, plan out what possibilities could happen. Like right now, there is a very real possibility that right-wing white terrorists around the world who are coordinating with each other might try and start a movement through these liberal democracies that are flagging because of the dying of the neoliberal hyper-capitalistic project. That could happen. That is a definite non-zero possibility. We could have a world war type situation that either looks like 1 and 2 or maybe one of the other regional conflicts that didn't boil over to a larger extent. It could happen between US, China, Russia, some sort of conglomeration of those forces. It could start with just a small problem but then escalate out. We're a little bit overdue for one of those big, giant wars. Yeah, Ukraine is one of those spots. That's something that could happen. We could have a major disaster. We could have a major terrorist attack that turns people against the idea of white supremacist terrorists. Like, there are so many variables all the time. History is just a winding river, and God knows what could possibly happen at any given moment. We could get out of this without some sort of a major bloodshed type conflict. And I have to tell you that if you are interested in making that happen, you have to work on the local level and you have to work on the national level. You have to work so damn hard because, again, the problem here is that the old neoliberal hyper-capitalistic project, which is taking the money from the poorest and giving it to the top, that old trickle-down bullshit, it doesn't work. It's done. It didn't work. It's failing. The question is, what do we do now? Who has a solution? We need to come up with a solution. We need to come up with an alternative. We cannot let the people who are pushing forth an alternative right now be the ones to determine the alternative. Jason Grant, it seems the right is going about all this destruction with a near religious zeal. What's it going to take to get the rest of society to stand up with equal vigor to defend democracy? It feels like we're a bunch of frogs just enjoying a nice warm bath. Yeah. Welcome to my world. It's really, really hard. I would love it if the media took this more seriously. And I have to tell you that I have felt a little bit better about it in certain extent. Like, you do have certain voices who have been speaking up. They've been gaining some sort of a platform. They've been calling this what it is. You're starting to see some people dip their toes in this stuff as the Republican Party takes more and more Democratic action. I would love it. I would love it if the message got out more. I would love it if our politicians were more serious about it. They need to understand that if they're not willing to call this fascism and if they're not willing to fight it, they need to understand that they can lose their positions. And I'm talking about getting primaried. I'm talking about alternate parties. I'm talking about alternate movements. You have to put pressure on people, because as long as Democrats feel like they are totally, totally safe, they have no interest in doing it, because they're always going after this mythical centered voter, right? They're always going after the old idea back in the 1960s. They're going after a woman in Dayton, Ohio, and she feels like she's socially liberal, but she's a little thrown off by people of color in the street and reform movements. That's who they're going after. That is who the center is for the Democratic Party. And that needs to change. That's not real. Not real. How do I feel that the defund abolition movement will play out in the next couple of years? I have to tell you, I think that the Democratic Party and the Democratic strategist, I think Biden threw a brick at that. I think some other people threw that off. But that being said, I have to tell you that feelings in this country about police violence and police oppression, I think they are still very, very raw. Who has any idea what's going to happen over the next few years? Things could change and shift considerably. If people could start believing, and this might be a generational shift too, if people can start believing that they should invest in their communities as opposed to oppressing their communities through violence, you might see some change. So I don't know. I don't know where that's going, but I feel like the nerves are still raw, and that is still one of the main sort of mobilizing forces and issues in the country. But the Democratic Party threw cold water on it. Absolutely, they did. They decided that that was not a winning political issue, and they just abandoned it. It was really problematic. We're about on 1 hour. I've still got questions left, so I'll do one more, and then we'll do a cheers to the hour and continue. Jen says, do American politicians understand how much danger we're in? Some of them do. Some of them understand what this is, and they're trying to work really, really hard. Others understand it, but they also, definitely hit the thumbs up. That helps. Subscribe, hit the thumbs up. Send these videos to your friends. Let them know what's going on. They already have their doubts. They already have their suspicions that things aren't right. We have to inform other people what's actually going on and form objective realities. That's a big, giant thing that we have to actually do. And that's small. Just talk to the people that you care about. I don't send them over to me. I'm more than happy to talk to them. If they have questions about anything that I've said tonight, I'll back it up with facts. I'll back it up with footnotes, all of that stuff. JYSexton@gmail.com. If they have questions, send them my way. By the way, we're 4, 3, 2, and 1. Cheers to 1 hour. Y'all are the best. Well, that's the reason, Aaron. The reason why a lot of what you're hearing from me or from other left voices, it sounds like what Republicans are saying, is because that's how they go ahead and they hijack the conversation. That's one of the reasons why the Republican Party has a stranglehold on middle America. What they do is they take the truth and then they twist it and then they redirect the anger. So again, I've talked about this before. Something like the New World Order or the Deep State. There's a nugget of truth to that shit. The New World Order is about America has been betrayed. That's why our businesses left, right? Why we entered the global community or whatever. Well, that is true. Neoliberalism and hypercapitalism went ahead and gave all of these businesses the rights to leave the country and then go ahead and exploit labor elsewhere and then move things around. Liberals who believed in it believed it would raise up the working class and make them in the middle. It didn't. It failed terribly. When you have a thing like the deep state, the idea that there are unelected members of government who go ahead and they can make things happen, that is true. It's not that they're after Donald Trump. That wasn't the truth. It wasn't a conspiracy against him. It just so happens that there are a lot of people in different positions who are in government, and it ensures that the government goes along a pretty narrow path. If you look at the Obama administration, they called it the blob, particularly with the military-industrial complex. And, so the whole point is that the right uses the truth and then twists the truth. They just twist it a little bit, and they make sure that way that the rightful anger is redirected, and it goes over here, and it goes against their political enemies, and it goes ahead and inoculates them. That is the reason why Donald Trump was able to take the things that he did wrong and was able to go ahead and blame other people for them. It's this twisted funhouse mirror. They're very good at that, which is why, and this is hopeful, if we know the truth and we have truth on our side and we're not giving people the easy spin, the left, right, blue, red dynamic, right? If we actually tell the people what has happened in our history and our politics, all of a sudden, that short circuits the bullshit conspiracy theories that they've been fed, because those are obviously bullshit conspiracy theories. If you have truth on your side and you're not just regurgitating these facts, these talking points, these headlines that are given to you by like mainstream news and politicians, if you're not regurgitating those things, all of a sudden you start dismantling this conspiracy theory that the right has created. It actually is pretty incredible. Downtown. Assuming Pelosi lives a comfy life, in your opinion, is that why she doesn't do so much she should, or she doesn't do so much as she should, or is she complicit? Seriously, all she does is talk, and only when it favors them politically. So here's the thing. Nancy Pelosi has one job and one job only. And that is, well, actually, I guess it's two jobs wrapped up into one. One is to control the Democratic caucus within the House and also to hold on to the purse strings of the Democratic Party. She is basically the rainmaker. She's the one that decides who will get the money when it comes to primaries and how much money people will get when it comes to their elections. She is a political head. Her job is not to rock the boats. That's never what she has been in there for. I'm sure she has convictions. I don't know exactly what they are, but what she is a person who doesn't want to do too much because she is concerned, again, with what we just talked about, that middle voter in Dayton, Ohio, who considers themselves a liberal, but also doesn't want to get like too crazy with racial reform and the like. That's what Nancy Pelosi is for. We can't keep looking at Nancy Pelosi as somebody who is going to change everything. That doesn't mean that she's a horrible person. It means that she is the political leader of the Democrats in the House and largely on a national scale. Oh, we're going to talk about Merrick Garland here in just a second. Sauce, how's your hot vax summer going? My hot vax summer has been going decent. The book is going really, really well. I just finished the 4th chapter. I've just shot into the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution, all of the revolutions of that moment, abolition, the treatment of Native Americans, the lead up to World War I, and sort of the rise of the influences that led to fascism. I feel like I'm getting a better understanding of what's going on in this sort of a modern era. I've got the rest of it, I think, pretty down pat. I'm figuring it out, and it's been good. I think it's going to come out in fall of 22. So that's been good. I've been enjoying my time. I've been getting tattoos, which is nice. I've wanted to do that for a while. I'll probably get a couple more here pretty soon. Have traveled a little bit. I am going to actually, so not this week, but the week after. I'm going to take a vow of silence, which I've done in the past. I'm going to take a longer one for about a week. I'm going to log off of the Twitter and the live streams, and I'm going to just focus on me for about a week and recharge and get ready to go. I'm excited about that. Those are frogs and some cicadas mixed in, is what that is. So I'm excited about the vow of silence. I'm excited about calming down, pausing from the podcast for a week and live streams and all that good stuff. Thinking, reading, recharging. I'm very, very excited. I am so ready to tour with the new book. American Rule was going to be like my first big national tour. Like I've done a couple of tours before, but this was going to be a really big national tour. And I got screwed on that end. But, I was very lucky in other regards. Speaking of, American Rule paperback is getting ready to come out here pretty soon. It's got a new chapter that talks about the coup, January 6th, and the pandemic. I'm really excited to get that out there. Hopefully it'll be good. But yeah, so hot vax summer. It's been pretty good so far. I'm still trying to navigate this whole, reopening America, what that means, where we are, all that good stuff. But the summer has been good so far. I'm feeling pretty good about it. Rob, I don't know if this is going to make any sense, but I'll try. Where do you feel like you are politically? I don't mean on the left-right spectrum. I mean more like what you were talking about on Pete Dominic's show about growing into an understanding of what's going on. Well, first of all, thank you for that question. I feel like this book, The Midnight Kingdom, and I started with the Roman Empire, where the Roman Empire is taken over by Christianity, which I think is a big reason why we're in the situation that we are and why modern history has worked the way that it has. I'm learning the problem, is what I would say. I'm informing myself of how we've arrived at this point, the missteps that we've taken. I'm starting to understand the conspiracy theories, the fascism. I'm starting to understand even deeper than what I did with American Rule. And I'm educating myself. What I feel like is going to happen with this book and moving forward is I'm starting to find my philosophy. Like the past few years have been spent sort of figuring out who I am and what I believe. And I think by the time that this book is over and in the aftermath of it, I think I'm going to figure out what I think we should do and where I think we should go and what I think would make a better world. Like I have thoughts, right? And they're informed, but I feel like I'm transforming. I feel like I'm growing into myself, and you have a front row seat for it. And I thank you for that. I hope that made sense. Sounds good in the head. Hopefully, over the course of a week of silence, I'll be able to get there. Keep democracy. Thoughts on A.G. Garland and his lack of house cleaning at the DOJ because he's looking like weak sauce. I'll be honest. Merrick Garland, one of the reasons why he was chosen by Barack Obama was because he was seen as a bipartisan figure. He was seen as somebody who wasn't going to offend many people. He was actually seen as sort of a gift to the right, in that sense, somebody that they weren't going to be help but vote for. Um, I assume he's a good guy. I don't know him, but what we're seeing right now is some real status quo DOJ bullshit. Truly is. I have been very concerned about a lot of people within the Democratic Party who have obviously learned nothing from the Trump years, who aren't taking this thing seriously. Um, I would like to see more from Eric Garland, other than just basically, sitting in the big chair and saying, more of the usual. Congrats. I'm not fond of what's going on. I feel like the picking of him for the AG spot was symbolic. It was like, oh, you won't vote him onto the Supreme Court. Well, guess what? He's now your attorney general. And I think a lot of people applauded it because they saw it as sort of a symbolic win, which is what the Democratic Party racks up. Symbolic wins. They have a bunch of symbolic wins. They were on the right side of history, even if they didn't control power, even if they didn't influence society. That's a problem. It's a real problem. Rodney, am I the only one who thinks it's a big mistake for liberals to embrace the Lincoln Project? There's no way these guys didn't know what they were doing. I would say to Rodney, I would go listen to the conversation that we had with Stuart Stevens on the Muckrake podcast, who was part of the Lincoln Project and a GOP strategist for 25 years who admitted he figured out what he was doing was wrong and dangerous and awful. I will say this, and this has been my line on the Lincoln Project for forever. If they want to go after the GOP, that's totally fine. They need to draw the line on telling Democrats and leftists how to operate their politics. These are the people who created the problem that we're in now. They're the ones who gave the rhetoric and the standing and the ideology to these people. They should not be welcomed in with open arms. They should be treated with a wariness. If they want to go after the GOP, that's totally fine. But there have been problems there, the way that they've behaved, the way they've handled their money. There are problems. All right, we got a few more, and then we're going to sign off and say goodnight. We're going to retreat into the darkness. Susan DeVoe, unless some faculty shut it down, Purdue will add a civics literacy requirement to graduate. This is, of course, indicative of Americans' woeful ignorance, myself included. Susan, I think you're better off than you think. What should the coursework include? Is Purdue behind the times, or is this addressing the issue of a new trend? I am a little bit suspect because, of course, Mitch Daniels is in charge of Purdue. But if I was going to design some sort of a civics class, first and foremost, I would make sure that people understand the actual history of government within the United States of America. And that goes back to the whole idea of critical race theory, which is that the United States of America was founded explicitly on aristocratic control. It was created to ensure that the citizens of the United States of America would not be able to control the levers of power. This is why the presidency works the way it does. This is why the Senate works the way that it does. All of this was put into place because they did not trust normal citizens. To be a citizen of the United States of America, and I'm not talking about a white, wealthy man who are well represented and always have been and have always had a seat at the table. To be a citizen of the United States of America has been an existence of fighting for your own agency and your own representation against all costs. The problem is that the government and the institutions and foundations of the United States of America have made that harder. We have been in a perpetual struggle and battle to be recognized as basic citizens with basic rights. The whole point of a civics education within the United States of America would be understanding that fact and learning how to mobilize on behalf of your own agency and also take care of each other. These are big questions, and we need to address them in a serious way. Nameless asked, do you ever read books by authors you don't like in real life, like, say, Tom Nichols? I would not read a book by Tom Nichols. Tom Nichols is just not worth anyone's time. He is not a serious person, and reading his takes in the Trump era has been painful. Tom Nichols does not reside in anything approaching an actual reality. That is a man who is in denial and trying to make good and trying to save his public soul. So no, I do not. I will tell you a book I've been reading lately, which I have found interesting, has been by Neil Ferguson. It's I believe it's The Statue in the Square, might be something along those lines. Um, his conservative takes in the book are not great. There are things, obviously, he's all about hierarchies, which is what conservatives are all about. But you'll read some of those people. Like, I think it's worth reading, like Fukuyama. I don't think Fukuyama is right about nearly anything, but it's really good to understand where he's coming from. It gives you a decent opportunity to understand their ideology and their mindset and where they're wrong. So yeah, I read people I don't agree with a lot of the time, but I do it more or less as a research into where we differ and where we disagree. All right, I got 3 questions left. Moo Young Kim, with all this going on, what do you read and or do to decompress and recharge? Staying engaged is insanely important, but so is staving off burnout. So what I do is I work all the time. Like that's what I do. I work all the time. Writing this book right now has me reading a lot of research. That's what I do with my time right now. I am of the mindset, and by the way, there's been a few of you who I know have been on board with this for a long, long time. Square in the Tower. Thank you. Square in the Tower. I know that you have, been in a lot of these bourbon talks. You might notice that I've gotten a little bit more gray hair. I feel like I've aged like a president, and that's because we're in the middle of a crisis. I feel like I need to work. I feel like I need to produce. I need to do everything that I damn well can in order to fight back against the tide. I take this very seriously. I'm not a grifter. I'm not histrionic. I'm not in this to get Facebook. Jesus, I'm not in this to get Twitter retweets or whatever. I'm in this to fight. I'm in this to make a difference. So basically, right now, my life is taken over by research. The places where I do find time, I'll take my dog for a little walk, play with her in the yard. I watch baseball pretty much every day. And when the summer hits and the baseball season is going on, I want baseball on. When we're done on here, I'm going to go inside. I'm going to crack open a beer, and I am going to watch the taped Cubs Cardinals game. That's my plan. So yeah, I watch baseball. I take breaths. I meditate, think, go to therapy, all that good stuff. I have people that I love and care about, and I'll talk to them, and I will I find solace there. So that's where I'm finding my time. Otherwise, like, I'm reading novels, I'm reading big books. When I finished American Rule, I sort of hit an off ramp. I just read a bunch of philosophy and weird books about time. Yeah, go Cubs. The Cubs look good this year. I like the Cubs this year. If they could get healthy, they'd run over some people. Kate, what can be done to pressure Biden to outlaw the federal death penalty like he promised? And what do you think about Arizona purchasing Zyklon B for their gas chamber? I think the Zyklon B is obvious what's going on there. I think it is. I think that it's really, really gross, and it's an opportunity to compete over who can be the most cruel and the most barbaric. The federal death penalty feels like one of those things. If we could have a larger populistic progressive movements, the type that took place at the turn of the 20th century, if we could have something like that, I think the death penalty issue could be folded into it. I think there's everything like election reform, fights against disenfranchising and gerrymandering, corporate taxing, universal health care. Those types of things with the federal death penalty rolled in, I think would make a really tasty sort of a leap forward in terms of a progressive movement. And I think that'd be a big deal. I think that'd be the way to do it. Alexis, and I'm putting this last so we can have a refrain of it. As always, what should we be doing? And be frighteningly specific, please. So I enjoyed that Alexis put it like this. And, be frighteningly specific. Call somebody tomorrow probably not tonight. It's 9 for most people. Call someone tomorrow that is a friend of yours, who is a relative of yours, somebody that you've had a political conversation with, somebody who's on the level, who understands things. They seem smart, they seem perceptive. You've had a conversation about politics, and maybe you kind of danced around things a little bit. Maybe you talked about, some headlines. And I know that you've had these conversations because I've had these conversations, even though this is my life and this is my career. You'll have a conversation, and back in the Trump days, it'd be like, oh God, I don't know, this Trump thing. And then it just sort of floats up into the ether because what could you possibly do? It's a TV show, right? Call up one of those people tomorrow and be like, hey, have you been paying attention to this like education thing? Have you been paying attention to this disenfranchising thing? Let's talk about that. Let's have an actual nuts and bolts conversation about where this stuff is going. If you want to send them one of these bourbon talks, do it. Give them my email, jysexton@gmail.com. Send them some articles. I'm perfectly happy talking to people. People do that. They actually send their friends and their families to me. And we have conversations and they ask me questions and we clarify things. It's kind of amazing. I'm more than happy to do that. But get somebody on the phone, get somebody on an email, and talk to them about what's going on. That's something you can do. And the more that you do that, the more that you have actual conversations with the people in your life about what's actually going on, as opposed to these conversations that are like, I don't know, what are you going to do? Somebody needs to do something, right? Those conversations don't get anywhere. They make us feel powerless. They make it feel like there's a TV show on that we can just scream at the screen, but we couldn't possibly do anything. Now that's step one. The other things that you can do is, and I'm sorry, but they have made it to where you're going to have to get involved in your community. You're going to have to figure out these school board things. You're going to have to volunteer for things. You're going to have to make phone calls. I am so sorry to tell you this, but it's exhausting work to maintain anything like what we're looking at. It's really hard. It's really, truly, truly hard. And I know you're going to have some people who are like, I don't know. I don't really want to think about it. I'm watching something on TV or whatever. I get it. But it is going to be really hard. And we're going to have to fight. We really, truly are, because this is such a massive thing. And they're only getting more blatant about it. And that is part of the downfall here. Is the GOP and the right are so blatant about this bullshit that they can't help themselves. When they go ahead and ban certain things like, critical race theory, when they start going after teachers, when they start pushing these like really aggressive anti-democratic bills, they are obvious about what they're doing. When they say Anglo-Saxon culture, they cannot help it. Talk to people, have actual conversations about this, and don't despair. I have to tell you, this is a big, giant thing. It's one of the reasons why I'm taking a week off. You have to recharge. If you start feeling yourself falling apart, you start feeling yourself coming unfrayed, you need to find the people in your life that you trust and you care about, and you need to lean on them for a little bit. You need to take a second. You need to take a deep breath. You need to arm yourself with knowledge and then get back into the fight when you can. This is what totalitarianism and fascism does. It beats the shit out of you. And I'm so sorry that that's where we are, but it's where we are. But I think we're stronger than them. I think there's more of us than them. If we can remember that we're not alone and we're not powerless, we're going to make the difference, and we're going to kick their asses. We're going to stop this problem. We're going to make a better country. We're not going to resort to anti-democratic activities. We're not going to resort to violence. We're going to win this thing because we're going to be strong and united. Exactly. Cheers to that. Being strong, being united, winning this whole damn thing, beating back fascism. Cheers to that. Got a busy week before I take a week off. Got a lot of research to do. Oh my God. I gotta really double down on the research this week and the next few weeks. It's going to be exhausting. I have to turn off the threats and the harassment because it's been a lot. So I got to do that work. We're having a new Muckrake podcast on Tuesday. We have a special guest lined up that I'm really, really excited about. I want to say the name, but she's the author of a really, really good book. I hope that ends up working out. If you want to help out, if you want to support the cause, you can become a patron over at patreon.com/muckrakepodcast. Over on Substack, jaredyatessexton.substack.com. If you become a subscriber, that helps out and supports my research. If we keep getting more subscribers and it keeps growing like it does, new doors will open, new content will come out. It's all very, very appreciated. And of course, if you haven't already, American Rule is out and about, all that good stuff. Yep, there'll be a Bourbon Talk 2 weeks time. I'll come back and I'll be rested, I'll be re-energized, recharged, and I'm ready to go. Enjoy Georgia. Be safe. Again, everyone be good, be safe, believe in yourselves. We're going to be all right. We really, truly are. I think we're going to win it. I think we're going to win this thing. Cheers. Thank you for hanging out. Y'all are wonderful, and I appreciate you more and more every single week. Cheers. All right. Be good. Be safe.